Hi and welcome to Heartcraftpaper. For today's tutorial, we're going to be using this cute little bear in a box from My Favorite Things, the Berry Special Birthday Collection. To begin, we're going to use a light stamping dye color. I picked peaches and cream for this particular one just because peach or neutral colors just tend to disappear once you start coloring in. So as you can see, it is very light, so this will be hidden behind our colors. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to pick this yellow color out of my palette, and my technique usually for stamping is to fill in along the borders and edges just so that we get a nice clear crisp line to show against other colors. Now I will usually let this dry a little bit before I go back in to start to spread the color out. And I'm going to just go ahead and select all my yellow areas that are slightly further apart. So that way it gives my watercolor some time to dry before I go back in with water. This has given some sections time to dry. Now I'm ready to come back in with a clean brush and a little bit of water. I don't want to overdo it, just so I can drag out the color from the edges towards the center of the segment that I'm coloring. Now, mind you, mine is more of a chalky type of watercolor, so I'm able to really push around some of that color, and that's the beautiful thing about watercolor, that you can push color around to intensify and lighten certain areas depending on what you would like. You can also remove and make simple corrections to your watercolor as well. So it is a difficult medium because you're using more fluid, but it is also very forgiving. Now I just want to lighten up that center a little bit. So as you can see, I'm drying my brush and pulling off some of that color out of the center. So I just want to make it so the center is lighter than the borderline, and this gives more of a definition to it because it is watercolor. So as you can see, with watercolor, you get this wonderful transparent type of look that just gives it a feel of softness. I want to dry this off a little bit just to make sure that now that I'm going to start with the next color, it doesn't run into my yellow. So I'm going to start with the ribbon that's at the very top, which is furthest away, so it gives time for my other segments to dry. We're going to start on the next part of the bow, and typically with watercolor, normally the object that is furthest away, you would start with a lighter color, but in this case it's fairly the same distance from your view, so I want to add some definition and darkness to the bottom of my ribbon, and then just make the ribbon that's on top a little bit lighter as the light is hitting it first. My yellow segments at the bottom are now dry. I'm going to go ahead and start with the ribbon that's kind of wrapped around the middle of the box there. That way my colors don't necessarily bleed together now that they've dried. And that's a trick to watercolor, making sure you have enough time to allow your painting to dry in certain places before you begin. Otherwise you'll get kind of this blending tie-dye type of effect, which is, depending on what you want to do, it might be useful for you. But for this particular painting or this particular stamp, we don't want that. We want to be able to have clear definition between the lines and the different colors. Previously, we're going to start with the center portion of the bow, the lighter section, because it is in the forefront, and the darker ones, of course, are shadowed. Let's go ahead and start with a clean brush and pick up some peach color for the muzzle. So the other light portion, of course, is the ear, which will come next. We'll make it a nice light pink shade before we pick brown up for the rest of the bear. We're done here, we're going to put in the final details of the eye, the nose, and the cleft using a black marker or jelly roll pen. So here are a few techniques to help you along your way. First, we want to charge the brush with color. This is what you would call a wash, and it will go from a more intense color to a less intense, being that you're starting with a fully charged brush, and as you move it along the paper, it starts to fade and lose some of the coloring and pigment. this next technique, it's called wet on wet. So basically we're going to drop some water down in the area that we want to paint, and then we're going to charge the brush and bring in that color. Kind of gives it a more of a tie-dye effect, but you can actually move around the ink pretty well, or the pigment pretty well around the water, and make areas that you want darker and more intense versus lighter ones. Now for this next one, I'm going to show you, this is what I used for making this particular card, which is actually to outline my drawing and then pull that color out towards the center utilizing water. And there you have it. You're now ready to make your card.